Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Her lipstick was still on my coffee mug. The same morning she whispered, "I love you," before heading to a Motel 6 with her married mentor. They called it a business trip. I called it betrayal. She cheated on me, drained our savings, and pitched her stolen startup to the same family she was robbing blind. While she rehearsed her TED Talk, I was wiring her text to the FBI. She thought I was just the quiet husband. What she didn't know? I am a QA engineer. I don't ignore bugs. I destroy them. My revenge? Unleashed on stage in front of everyone she lied to. She wanted a launch party. I gave her a takedown. The key turned in the lock with a familiar grinding sound that Patrick Chen had grown to hate. 3 years in this apartment, and the landlord still hadn't fixed it. He pushed open the door to their 2-bedroom rental in San Jose, the weight of another 12-hour day pressing down on his shoulders like a lead blanket. "Chelsea, you home?" His voice echoed through the empty living room. No response. Again. Patrick dropped his laptop bag by the door and walked to the kitchen, where a note stuck to the refrigerator. "At networking event. Don't wait up. Love you. See." He stared at the heart she'd drawn next to her name, remembering when notes like these used to make him smile. Now they just reminded him of all the dinners he'd eaten alone this month. 15, if he was counting. And he was. The refrigerator hummed as he opened it, revealing leftover pad thai from 2 nights ago, and a 6-pack of beer he'd bought for a weekend that never seemed to come. He grabbed a beer and the takeout container, not bothering to heat it up. Cold noodles had become his comfort food lately. As he ate standing at the counter, Patrick's mind drifted back to simpler times. 6 years ago, when he first saw Chelsea at that Starbucks on Stevens Creek Boulevard. She was behind the counter, her ponytail swinging as she called out orders with an energy that made even the most caffeinated customers seem sluggish. He'd been debugging code for hours, eyes burning from staring at screens, when her laugh cut through his focus like sunshine through fog. "Triple shot Americano for the gentleman who looks like he hasn't slept in days," she'd called out, sliding his cup across the counter with a wink. "That obvious?" he'd asked, managing a tired smile. "Let me guess, tech. QA engineer. You? Barista by day, marketing student by night, future mogul by, eventually?" She'd grinned, and something in his chest had shifted, like a program finally compiling after hours of errors. Their wedding 3 years later hadn't been fancy. 50 guests crammed into Golden Phoenix restaurant in Milpitas, Chelsea's aunties gossiping in Mandarin while his cousins compared stock options. She'd worn her mother's dress, altered to fit, and he'd splurged on a suit from Men's Warehouse. Their honeymoon was 3 days in Vegas, 2 of which he'd spent sick from bad buffet shrimp while Chelsea rubbed his back and fed him Gatorade. "We'll have a real honeymoon someday," she'd promised, curled up next to him in their Circus hotel room. "When we have our house, our careers figured out. When we're not counting every penny." Patrick finished his beer and tossed the container in the trash. The house. Always the house. In the Bay Area, that dream felt about as achievable as winning the lottery. They'd done the math so many times 20% down on even a modest place meant saving $200,000. At their current rate, factoring in rent increases and inflation, they'd be ready to buy when they were 50. His phone buzzed. "Chelsea. Event running late. Scott Morrison is here, the logistics guy I told you about. He's interested in my idea. Might be home really late. Don't wait up. XO." Scott Morrison. The name had been coming up a lot lately. Patrick tried to remember what Chelsea had told him about the man. Something about owning a small logistics company, investing in local startups as a side venture. Chelsea had met him at one of those entrepreneurs of Silicon Valley meetups she'd started attending religiously. The business idea. Patrick walked to their bedroom, where Chelsea's vision board covered half the wall. Magazine cutouts of successful women, quotes about hustle and grinding, pictures of the house she wanted, a modest 3-bedroom in Cupertino with a lemon tree in the backyard. In the center, her business plan, Chelsea's Organics, all natural, locally sourced beauty products. Clean beauty for real women, she'd pitched to him dozens of times. He'd been supportive, even when she'd blown $5,000 on that MLM scheme selling essential oils. "It's not the same thing. she'd insisted when that venture collapsed. That was someone else's dream. This is mine. The front door opened just after midnight. Patrick pretended to be asleep as Chelsea tiptoed into the bedroom, but he could smell the wine on her breath, mixed with a cologne that wasn't his. "You awake?" she whispered, sitting on the edge of the bed. He rolled over, blinking in the darkness. "How'd it go?" Even in the dim light from the street lamp outside, he could see her eyes shining. "Amazing. Scott thinks I could really have something. He's willing to put in $20,000 to get started. $20,000, Patrick. That's inventory, website, marketing budget, everything I need." "That's great, babe." He tried to match her enthusiasm, but something cold settled in his stomach. "What does he want in return?" "Standard equity split, and he'll mentor me, introduce me to his network. Patrick, this could be it. This could be our ticket out of this apartment, out of the top paycheck life." She leaned down and kissed him, and he tasted the Merlot and something else, hope, maybe, or desperation. It was getting harder to tell the difference. "There's just one thing," Chelsea said, pulling back. "I think I need to quit my job, to focus on this full-time. Scott says the difference between successful entrepreneurs and everyone else is commitment, going all in." Patrick sat up. "Quit? Chelsea, that's $65,000 a year. Our rent alone is—" "I know the numbers." Her voice had an edge now. "I do our budget every month, remember? But this is an investment in our future, in my future. I can't keep being a marketing coordinator forever, writing copy for other people's dreams. I'm not saying don't pursue it, but maybe start part-time. Weekends?" Chelsea stood up, silhouetted against the window. "You don't get it. You're happy being a QA engineer, and that's fine, but I want more. I need more." The words hung between them like a fault line, invisible but dangerous. Patrick watched her walk to the bathroom, heard the water running, the aggressive way she brushed her teeth. When she came back to bed, she curled away from him, her breathing deliberately even. He stared at the ceiling, calculating. His $95,000 salary, after taxes, rent, groceries, car payments, student loans, they barely saved $500 a month as it was. Without Chelsea's income. "I'll make it work," he whispered into the darkness, not sure if she was still awake. "If this is really what you want, we'll make it work." Chelsea's hand found his under the covers, squeezing tight. "Thank you. You won't regret this, I promise. Scott says with his connections we could be profitable within 6 months. A year tops." Patrick squeezed back, pushing down the voice in his head that sounded suspiciously like his mother. When something sounds too good to be true. But this was his wife. The woman who'd brought him soup when he worked late, who'd danced with him in this very bedroom to oldies playing from her phone, who'd stood by him when his startup job had imploded and left them scrambling to pay rent. If she believed in this, if she needed this, then he'd believe too. Outside, a siren wailed down 101, and somewhere in the distance, another couple was probably having the same conversation, making the same promises, chasing the same Silicon Valley dream that kept millions of people grinding away in overpriced apartments, betting everything on tomorrow. Patrick closed his eyes and tried not to think about how many of those bets actually paid off. 2 months. That's how long Chelsea had been focusing on the business full-time, and Patrick could feel every one of those 60 days in his lower back from driving Uber after his regular job. He'd picked up the side gig without telling Chelsea, signing up for the late-night airport runs that paid better but left him exhausted the next morning. "You look tired," his coworker Raj mentioned during their morning stand-up. "Everything okay?" "Just the new release cycle," Patrick lied, downing his 3rd cup of coffee. "You know how it is." But Raj didn't know. None of them did. How could Patrick explain that he was working 60-hour weeks to support his wife's dream while she had coffee meetings with another man? The meetings with Scott had become a regular thing. Every Tuesday and Thursday, sometimes Saturdays. "He's teaching me so much about business development," Chelsea would say, eyes bright with something Patrick chose to interpret as entrepreneurial passion. "Did you know that most startups fail because of poor financial planning? Scott's introducing me to his accountant, Victoria. She freelances for small businesses." Victoria Lang turned out to be a sharp-featured woman who always seemed to be calculating something behind her designer glasses. Chelsea had brought her by the apartment once, and Patrick had watched the way Victoria's eyes catalogued their second-hand furniture, the water stain on the ceiling, the stack of overdue bills he'd tried to hide under a magazine. "Cozy place," Victoria had said in a tone that meant the opposite. Now, Patrick sat in the Uber parking lot at SFO, waiting for his next ping. His phone showed $87 for the night, enough for groceries if they stuck to basics. He'd tell Chelsea he got a small bonus at work. These little lies were becoming easier, like worn paths through tall grass. A text from Chelsea popped up. "Working late at Scott's office. He has a whole setup for product photography. Don't wait for dinner." Patrick stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. He wanted to ask why she couldn't take photos during normal hours, why it always had to be evenings, why Scott's name appeared in every other sentence these days. Instead, he typed, "Okay, drive safe." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Love you." He pocketed the phone without responding and accepted the next ride request. The passenger was a woman in her 50s, returning from visiting family. "Long day?" she asked, noticing his tired eyes in the rearview mirror. "Something like that." "I used to drive nights too, back when my kids were young. My husband had been laid off and we needed every cent." She smiled sadly. "Those were hard times, but we made it through. Been married 32 years now." "What was your secret?" Patrick found himself asking. The woman considered this. "Honestly, learning when to hold tight and when to let go, and knowing the difference between supporting someone and enabling them." They drove the rest of the way in silence, but her words rattled around Patrick's head like loose change. When he finally got home at 2 a.m., Chelsea's laptop was open on the dining table. She'd been working on her business plan, the screen still glowing with spreadsheets and projections. Patrick knew he shouldn't look, but something made him sit down and scroll through. The numbers didn't add up. According to the bank statements minimized at the bottom of the screen, the business account showed $3,000, but Scott had invested $20,000. Where was the rest? Patrick clicked through the browser tabs, his QA instincts kicking in. Test everything, assume nothing. That was the first rule of his job. He found emails, dozens of them, between Chelsea and Scott. Most were business-related, discussing suppliers and marketing strategies, but the tone in some of them. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Wear that red dress, you know it brings out your entrepreneurial spirit. Last night was incredible. You're teaching me so much about everything. Victoria won't be at the office Thursday evening. We'll have privacy to go over those numbers you wanted to discuss." Patrick's hands were shaking now. He clicked on the Uber app on his phone, checking Chelsea's ride history through their shared account. There it was. Multiple trips to the Motel 6 on El Camino Real, middle of the day, always on the days she said she was meeting suppliers. He closed the laptop carefully, making sure everything was exactly as he'd found it. Then he went to the bathroom and threw up the coffee and airport food coming back in acidic waves. When he finally made it to bed, Chelsea stirred, reaching for him in her sleep. "Patrick," she mumbled. "You're so late." "Just got in," he whispered. She curled into him, her hair smelling like unfamiliar shampoo. "I had the best day. Scott thinks we could expand into Northern California by next year, maybe even get into Whole Foods." "That's great, babe." "Are you okay? You're all tense." Patrick forced his muscles to relax. "Just tired. Long day." "I appreciate you so much," Chelsea murmured, already drifting back to sleep. "Supporting me like this. I know it's hard now, but I promise it'll be worth it." "Scott says, go back to sleep," Patrick interrupted, not wanting to hear that name again. As Chelsea's breathing evened out, Patrick stared at the water stain on the ceiling. It had grown since they'd moved in, spreading like a bruise across the white paint. The landlord kept promising to fix it, but promises were cheap in the Bay Area. Everyone was always promising something better tomorrow while picking your pocket today. He thought about the woman in his Uber, about holding tight versus letting go. But what if you were holding on to something that was already gone? What if you were just gripping empty air while telling yourself it was still solid? Patrick closed his eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, he lay there calculating. How many Uber rides to make rent? How many hours of overtime to cover groceries? How many lies he could swallow before they poisoned him completely? In the morning, he'd smile and make coffee and kiss his wife goodbye as she left for another meeting with Scott. He'd go to work and test software for bugs, all the while ignoring the critical errors in his own life. But tonight, in the darkness of their overpriced apartment with its leaking ceiling and second-hand furniture, Patrick let himself feel the full weight of what he'd discovered. The American dream, it turned out, had fine print that no one bothered to read until it was too late. And somewhere in that print, in letters too small to see, was a clause about what happened when the person you loved most became a stranger wearing a familiar face. Chelsea shifted in her sleep, mumbling something that sounded like another man's name. Patrick pulled away carefully, creating space between them that felt like a canyon. Tomorrow, he'd have to decide what to do with what he knew. Tonight, he just lay there, counting water stains like stars in a ruined sky. Patrick Chen had become a detective in his own life. Not the glamorous kind from TV shows, but the desperate kind, a man scrolling through credit card statements at 5 a.m. while his wife slept peacefully beside him. $127.43 at Sephora. Need to look professional for investor meetings. $340 at Nordstrom. It's an investment in the business, Patrick. $89.99 at Victoria's Secret. That one didn't even come with an explanation. He screenshotted everything, building a folder buried deep in his phone labeled Tax Documents 2018. The irony wasn't lost on him hiding evidence of his wife's betrayal in a folder she'd never check because she always left the taxes to him. "You're up early," Chelsea said, stretching as morning light filtered through their bedroom blinds. Patrick quickly locked his phone. Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd get a head start on the day. She kissed his cheek, and he tried not to notice how she angled her phone away as she checked it. "I might be late again tonight. Scott wants to go over the Q3 projections with Victoria." "On a Friday night?" "You know how it is with startups. No such thing as weekends." She was already heading to the shower, effectively ending the conversation. Patrick waited until he heard the water running before opening her laptop again. He'd memorized her password months ago, their wedding date. How romantic. The business account now showed $1,500, down from $3,000 just 2 days ago. He took photos of everything with his phone, careful to hold it steady despite his shaking hands. At work, he found himself staring at his monitor, test cases blurring together. His manager, Jennifer, knocked on his cubicle wall. "Patrick, you missed the regression testing meeting." "Sorry, He had no excuse. How could he explain that he'd spent the last hour researching divorce lawyers on his phone? Jennifer's expression softened. "Is everything okay? You haven't seemed like yourself lately." "Just some personal stuff. I'll be fine." "Take the afternoon off if you need to. We can cover the test suite." Patrick almost laughed. Time off was the last thing he needed. Time meant thinking, and thinking meant confronting the reality that his marriage was disintegrating like code with a memory leak slowly at first, then all at once. Instead, he threw himself into work, finding bugs with vicious efficiency. Each defect he logged felt like a small victory, proof that he could still identify problems and fix them, even if only in software. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hey, this is Danielle Park. Chelsea hired me to build the website. I haven't been paid for last month's work. Could you please let her know? I've tried reaching her, but no response." Patrick stared at the message. He knew he should forward it to Chelsea, let her handle her business. Instead, he typed back. "How much does she owe you?" $1,200 for the e-commerce setup. I really need it for rent. Sorry to bother you with this. $1,200. Money that should have been in the business account. Money that had vanished along with Chelsea's explanations and their future together. "I'll look into it," he replied. That evening, Patrick didn't go home. Instead, he drove to the parking lot of the Motel 6 on El Camino Real and waited. It was the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour, with faded paint and a broken sign that flickered between vacancy and darkness. He didn't have to wait long. Chelsea's white Honda Civic pulled in at 6:47 p.m. She got out, smoothing down the red dress, the one she'd bought for investor meetings. Scott's Mercedes followed minutes later. Patrick watched them disappear into room 114, his hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. Part of him wanted to storm in, to create a scene like in the movies. But the QA engineer in him knew better. Document everything. Build your case. Test thoroughly before deployment. He took photos with his phone, the cars, the room number, the timestamp. Then he drove to his cousin Michael's apartment in Fremont. Michael worked in IT security and owed Patrick a favor from when Patrick had helped him move last year. "I need you to help me recover some deleted texts," Patrick said without preamble. Michael looked at the phone. Patrick handed him Chelsea's old iPhone she'd replaced last month. "Dude, is this about what I think it's about? Can you do it or not?" "Give me 20 minutes. It took 15. The recovered messages filled the screen like evidence at a crime scene. "Can't stop thinking about last night. You're incredible." "Scott, Patrick's working late again. Come over?" Chelsea. "Victoria set up the offshore account. We can start moving money next week." Scott. "I feel guilty sometimes, but then I remember this is for our future." Chelsea. "Once the acquisition goes through, we'll have enough to start fresh. Texas is beautiful this time of year." Scott. Patrick read until his eyes burned, until the words stopped making sense, until his cousin gently took the phone away and handed him a beer. "What are you going to do?" Michael asked. "I don't know yet." It was the first honest thing Patrick had said in weeks. "You need a lawyer, man, like yesterday." Patrick nodded, sipping the beer without tasting it. Tomorrow was Saturday. Chelsea would say she had a workshop to attend or a supplier to meet or another lie wrapped in entrepreneurial ambition. And Patrick would smile and kiss her goodbye and continue pretending he didn't know his wife was planning to leave him for a man who promised her everything Patrick couldn't provide. But not for much longer. The QA engineer in him had found all the bugs in this system. Now he just had to decide whether to patch them or let the whole thing crash. His phone buzzed. Chelsea. "Working late again. Scott ordered Chinese for the team. Don't wait up. Love you." Patrick screenshotted this message too, adding it to his growing collection. Evidence. Documentation. Proof that love could debug itself, leaving nothing but corrupted files and error messages where a marriage used to be. "You can crash here tonight if you want," Michael offered. Patrick shook his head. "I need to go home. Need to keep playing the part a little longer." "How can you stand it? Knowing what you know?" Patrick thought about it as he finished his beer. "Same way I handle critical bugs in production. Stay calm, document everything, and plan the fix carefully. The difference is, this time, the fix might mean burning the whole system down." He drove home through empty streets, past other apartment complexes full of other couples probably having their own versions of this nightmare. The Bay Area dream, it turned out, came with more bugs than anyone's test cases could catch. Chelsea was already asleep when he got home, her phone charging on the nightstand. The red dress hung on the bathroom door, waiting to be dry cleaned. Patrick stared at it for a long moment, then quietly packed a go bag with essential documents and clothes, hiding it in the trunk of his car, just in case. Just like any good QA engineer would do, always have a rollback plan when the deployment goes wrong. The coffee was bitter, but Patrick drank it anyway. Across from him, Timothy Walsh organized papers with the efficiency of a man who'd handled hundreds of broken marriages. The lawyer's office in downtown San Jose was small but neat, with certificates on the wall and a view of construction cranes building another overpriced condo complex. "Based on what you've shown me," Timothy said, adjusting his reading glasses, "you have grounds for divorce with cause. The adultery is clear, but the financial fraud, that's criminal." "Criminal?" Patrick set down his cup. "Moving money from a business account to personal use, especially with intent to defraud investors? That's embezzlement. Wire fraud if they used electronic transfers. The IRS will definitely be interested in those offshore accounts." Patrick thought about the people Chelsea had convinced to invest. Small amounts, mostly $500 here, $1,000 there, her aunt from Fremont, their neighbor who'd just retired, the lady from her gym who believed in supporting women entrepreneurs. "What are my options?" Timothy leaned back. "You could file for divorce immediately. With this evidence, you'd likely keep most assets and avoid alimony. Or, he paused, studying Patrick, you could wait, gather more evidence, maybe even let them complete whatever scheme they're planning. The bigger the fraud, the harder they fall. I don't want revenge, Patrick said, though even he wasn't sure if that was true. I just want this to be over. Then why haven't you confronted her? Patrick stared at the construction outside. A crane lifted steel beams into place, building something new where something old used to be. Because I need to know I did everything right. No room for error, no bugs in the code. Timothy smiled grimly. You sound like an engineer. QA, Patrick corrected. We don't build things, we find what's broken. After leaving the lawyer's office, Patrick drove aimlessly through the valley, past the Google campus where he'd once dreamed of working, past the Starbucks where he'd met Chelsea, past the church where they'd gotten married, his mother crying happy tears while Chelsea's father made a speech about building a life together. His phone rang. Chelsea. Hey, babe, where are you? I thought we could have lunch together for once. The normalcy in her voice made his chest tight. I'm running errands. Oh, well, I have amazing news. Scott thinks we might have a buyer for the company. Some bigger cosmetics firm wants to acquire small organic brands. Can you believe it? 6 months in and we're already talking acquisition. How much are they offering? 10 million! She laughed, high and excited. I mean, I'd only get a portion after investors and expenses, but still. We could finally get that house, Patrick. The one with the lemon tree. Patrick pulled over, his hands shaking. 10 million. For a company that had maybe $50,000 in total sales. It didn't make sense unless... Patrick? You there? Yeah, sorry, that's incredible, Chels. Scott wants to celebrate. There's this party next month when we finalize everything. December 15th. He's renting out the community center, inviting all the investors, some press. Will you come? I know you've been working so hard and I haven't been the best wife lately, but I want you there. My success is our success, right? Right, Patrick echoed. I'll be there. I love you, she said, and for a moment she sounded like the girl from the coffee shop again. I know things have been tough, but we're so close to making it. Just a little longer. After she hung up, Patrick sat in his car for a long time. December 15th, 1 month away. He opened his phone and scrolled through the evidence he'd collected. Screenshots, photos, recovered texts, financial records. Enough to destroy her completely. But something Timothy had said echoed in his mind. The bigger the fraud, the harder they fall. Patrick made a decision. He'd wait. Play the supportive husband for 1 more month. Let them think they'd won, but he'd also prepare. That evening, when Chelsea came home giddy with champagne and takeout from their favorite Thai place, Patrick smiled and toasted to her success. He listened to her talk about the future, about Scott's brilliance, about how Victoria had structured the deal to minimize taxes. You're quiet, Chelsea noticed, touching his hand across the table. Everything okay? Just proud of you, he lied smoothly. You're achieving your dreams. She squeezed his hand, and for a brief moment, Patrick saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, maybe. Or just the shadow of the woman she used to be before ambition and another man's promises had corrupted her code. I couldn't have done it without you, she said. Quitting Google, driving Uber. Yeah, I know about that. Mrs. Kim from downstairs saw you. Why didn't you tell me? Patrick shrugged. Didn't want you to worry. You had enough on your plate. Chelsea's eyes filled with tears. After the acquisition, things will be different, I promise. We'll take that honeymoon we never had. Maybe Europe? Maybe, Patrick agreed, pouring more champagne. They went to bed together for the first time in weeks. Chelsea curled against him, whispering plans about their future house, their future life, built on lies and stolen money and another man's touch. Patrick held her and said nothing, feeling like a ghost haunting his own marriage. Later, when her breathing deepened into sleep, he carefully extracted himself and went to the living room. He opened his laptop and began typing, email to IRS Fraud Division subject, suspected tax evasion and wire fraud. Dear Sir, Madam, I would like to report suspicious financial activity. He didn't send it, not yet, but he saved it to drafts, Another piece of evidence in his careful construction of consequences. December 15th was circled on the calendar in red. Chelsea had drawn hearts around it. The day of her triumph. Patrick allowed himself a small, grim smile. She was right about one thing: December 15th would definitely be a day to remember, just not in the way she expected. Outside, Silicon Valley hummed with the dreams of 10,000 entrepreneurs, each one convinced they were building the future. But Patrick had learned the hard way that sometimes the future was just a bug in the code, waiting to crash everything you'd built. He closed the laptop and returned to bed, fitting himself against his wife's warm back. One more month of pretending, one more month of lies, and then finally, the truth would deploy to production. The ceiling stain had grown again, he noticed. Still spreading, still ignored, still promising that eventually, everything falls apart. Patrick closed his eyes and tried not to think about how much it would cost to fix. Some things, he was learning, were broken beyond repair. December in the Bay Area didn't feel like Christmas was coming. No snow, no real cold, just gray skies and the endless grind of traffic on 101. Patrick sat in the parking lot of the community center, watching volunteers hang a banner that read, "Chelsea's Organics Launch Party, December 15th. 2 weeks away. His phone buzzed. A text from his manager. "Patrick, need to discuss your performance. Can you come in early tomorrow?" Performance. Patrick almost laughed. He'd been running on 3 hours of sleep, fueled by gas station coffee, and the kind of rage that burned cold and steady. Of course, his work was suffering. How could he debug code when his whole life was full of fatal errors? He drove home to find Chelsea in the living room with Victoria, papers spread across their second-hand coffee table. Both women looked up when he entered, and something passed between them, a quick glance that made Patrick's skin crawl. "Hey, babe," Chelsea said, too brightly. "Victoria's just helping me with the final paperwork for the acquisition." "Patrick?" Victoria nodded, her calculator fingers never stopping their movement across her laptop keyboard. "Working late again?" "The life of a QA engineer," he replied, setting down his bag. "Always another bug to catch." Victoria's smile was sharp. "Must be exhausting looking for problems all day." "You get used to it. Sometimes the biggest bugs are hiding in plain sight." Chelsea shifted uncomfortably. "Anyone hungry? I could order pizza." "I'm good," Patrick said, heading to the bedroom. "You two keep working. Don't let me interrupt your business." He closed the door and pulled out his phone, opening the email app. 3 new messages from Danielle Park, the web developer, each more desperate than the last. Chelsea now owed her $2,400. Patrick had been paying her in small installments from his Uber earnings, telling her Chelsea was having cash flow issues. Through the thin walls, he could hear Chelsea and Victoria talking in low voices. He pressed his ear against the door. "Sure he doesn't know?" Victoria's voice. "Patrick, please. He's sweet but clueless. Too trusting for his own good." Chelsea laughed, and it sounded nothing like the laugh that had charmed him 6 years ago. "Besides, after the 15th, it won't matter." "And you're sure about Texas?" Scott's wife doesn't know anything. As far as she's concerned, he's on business trips. The beauty of being married to a logistics guy always traveling. Patrick stepped back from the door, his heart hammering. Scott was married. Of course he was. Just another bug in the system. Another test case that would fail in production. He opened his laptop and logged into the joint bank account. Chelsea had been slowly draining it $200 here, $500 there, always with reasonable explanations. Supplier payment, marketing materials, business lunch. They were down to $1,100 total. Rent was due in 2 weeks. A knock on the door. "Babe, you okay in there?" Patrick quickly closed the laptop. "Yeah, just changing." Chelsea opened the door, and for a moment in the lamplight, she looked like the girl he'd married. Same face, same body. But the software running behind those eyes had been completely rewritten. "Victoria left. Want to watch something? We haven't had a Netflix night in forever." It was an olive branch, or maybe just guilt manifesting as nostalgia. Patrick found himself nodding. "Sure." They settled on the couch, Chelsea tucking herself against his side like she used to. She picked a romantic comedy, something light and forgettable. Halfway through, she paused it. "Patrick?" Do you ever think about what would have happened if we'd made different choices? What do you mean? Like, if you'd taken that job at Facebook when you had the chance, or if I'd stayed in corporate instead of trying this entrepreneur thing. Patrick stared at the frozen screen. We make choices based on what we know at the time. Can't debug the past. I guess. She was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry I've been so absent lately. After the acquisition goes through, I want us to take a real vacation. Maybe Hawaii? Remember how we always talked about learning to surf? The lie came so easily to her, wrapped in shared memories and future promises. Patrick wondered if she even knew she was lying anymore, or if she'd convinced herself that somehow she could have both the life with Scott and the safety net of their marriage. That sounds nice, he said. Chelsea kissed him then, sudden and desperate. For a moment, Patrick let himself kiss her back, tasting wine and betrayal and the ghost of what they used to be. Then he pulled away. I'm tired. Big day tomorrow. Disappointment flickered across her face, quickly replaced by understanding. Of course, you've been working so hard. They went to bed in silence, the space between them feeling like miles. Patrick lay awake, thinking about the launch party. He'd already made arrangements, asked 2 friends from his gaming group to come as moral support, though they didn't know why. Printed out copies of key evidence. Prepared what he would say. The hardest part had been the call to Chelsea's parents. Her father had answered, his voice warm with affection for his son-in-law. Patrick, how's my favorite engineer? I'm okay, Uncle. Listen, I need to tell you something about the business. About Chelsea. The silence on the other end stretched long. Finally, we invested our savings, Patrick, $20,000. She said it was guaranteed to triple within a year. Patrick closed his eyes. I know, I'm sorry. Just maybe come to the launch party, December 15th. Everything will be clear then. Is she in trouble? Yeah, Patrick admitted. She is. And you? Are you okay, son? The kindness in the old man's voice nearly broke him. I will be. Now, listening to Chelsea's sleeping breath, Patrick wondered if that was true. In 2 weeks, he'd destroy everything: her business, her reputation, her relationship with Scott. The IRS would investigate. Criminal charges would likely follow. The woman sleeping beside him would hate him forever. But she'd already killed their marriage. He was just performing the autopsy in public. His phone lit up with a notification. An email from Timothy Walsh. Patrick reviewed the additional evidence you sent. This is significant fraud. Are you certain you want to wait until the party? We could file immediately and freeze their assets. Patrick typed back, I'm sure. December 15th. I want them to think they've won first. It was petty, maybe. Cruel, definitely. But Patrick had spent 6 years being the nice guy, the supportive husband, the one who sacrificed and smiled and pretended everything was fine. He'd earned the right to a little cruelty. Chelsea stirred in her sleep, murmuring something that sounded like Scott. Patrick turned away, facing the wall with its spreading water stain. 2 more weeks of this performance. 2 more weeks of pretending his heart wasn't a corrupted file, damaged beyond recovery. Outside, a car alarm went off, wailing into the night like a warning everyone would ignore. Patrick pulled the pillow over his head and tried not to think about how in 2 weeks he'd be the one sounding the alarm that would finally make people pay attention. The bug had been in the system all along. He was just waiting for the right moment to let it crash everything down. The Palo Alto Police Department's fraud division operated out of a building that looked more like a tech startup than a law enforcement facility. Patrick sat across from Detective Sarah Chen, no relation despite the shared surname, watching her review the stack of evidence he'd compiled. This is thorough, she said, flipping through printed screenshots and bank statements. You in law enforcement? QA engineer? We're trained to document everything? Detective Chen smiled grimly. Well, you've done our job for us. This is clear embezzlement, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud. The offshore accounts especially that elevates this to federal territory. What happens next? We'll coordinate with the FBI's white-collar crime unit. Based on what you've shown me, we'll likely move on December 15th at the party. Public arrest sends a message, prevents them from destroying evidence or fleeing. She leaned forward. Are you prepared for that? Watching your wife get arrested? Patrick thought about the empty business account, the unpaid developers, the retirees who'd invested their savings. She made her choice. I'm just making mine. And you're certain about the timing? We could move earlier. No. The party. I want all the investors there. They deserve to see the truth. Detective Chen nodded. We'll have agents in place. Try to act normal until then. Can you do that? I've been doing it for months. After leaving the police station, Patrick drove to his parents' house in Milpitas. His mother opened the door, took one look at his face, and pulled him into a hug without saying a word. I know, she whispered in Mandarin. Chelsea's father told us. Oh, my poor boy. Patrick let himself be held for a moment, feeling like a child again. His father appeared from the kitchen, his face grave. You're doing the right thing, his father said quietly. Even if it doesn't feel like it. She was my wife, Ba. I loved her. And she was supposed to love you. Instead, she chose greed. His father's voice hardened. In business, we have a saying. Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. Chelsea became a hog. They fed him, of course. His mother's beef noodle soup, the comfort food of his childhood. Patrick ate mechanically, barely tasting it. Where will you stay, after? His mother asked. Here, if that's okay. Just for a while. This is your home, always. Patrick's phone buzzed, Chelsea asking where he was. He texted back that he was grabbing dinner with a coworker, another lie added to the pile. I should go, he said, though every fiber of his being wanted to stay in this warm kitchen with its familiar smells and unconditional love. His mother packed him leftovers, enough for several meals. Remember, she said, switching to English for emphasis, you are not the one who broke your marriage. You are just cleaning up the mess. Patrick drove home slowly, taking the long way through suburban streets lined with houses he and Chelsea would never afford. In driveways, families loaded Christmas trees onto car roofs. Normal people living normal lives, untouched by fraud and betrayal. The apartment was dark when he arrived. A note on the counter. At Scott's planning the party. There's pad thai in the fridge. Love you. Patrick looked at the takeout container and threw it in the trash. He couldn't stomach any more of Chelsea's guilt offerings disguised as care. He sat at his computer and opened the folder labeled Evidence. Everything was backed up in triplicate cloud storage, external drives, USB sticks hidden in various places. The QA engineer in him had tested every contingency. An email from Danielle Park popped up. Patrick, I'm sorry to keep bothering you, but I really need that payment. My landlord is threatening eviction. Patrick looked at his own bank balance. $342 after paying his share of rent. He'd maxed out his credit cards, keeping them afloat while Chelsea played entrepreneur with another man's money. But Danielle didn't deserve to suffer for Chelsea's choices. He transferred $300 to Danielle with a note. This is all I have right now. I'm sorry. Everything will be resolved on December 15th. Her response was immediate. Thank you. I hope whatever's happening gets better. Patrick almost laughed. Better. As if there was a patches available for a marriage that had been corrupted at the kernel level. The front door opened. Chelsea entered, glowing with excitement and wine. Behind her, unbelievably, was Scott Morrison himself. Patrick, Chelsea said, too loud, too bright. Look who stopped by to discuss the final arrangements. Scott extended his hand. Patrick, good to finally meet you properly. Chelsea talks about you all the time. Patrick shook the offered hand, noting the manicure, the expensive watch, the wedding ring Scott didn't bother to hide. All good things, I hope. Of course. She says you're the most supportive husband in the world, letting her pursue her dreams like this. Scott's smile was practiced, corporate. Not many men would be secure enough to support their wife's vision. Well, Patrick said evenly, I've always believed in documenting vision thoroughly. You never know when you'll need to review it later. Scott's smile faltered slightly. Chelsea jumped in, nervous energy crackling. Scott was just leaving, weren't you, Scott? Right. Big day coming up, lots to prepare. He clapped Patrick on the shoulder with false bonhomie. You should be proud of her, man. She's going places. Yes, Patrick agreed. She certainly is. After Scott left, Chelsea busied herself in the kitchen, avoiding eye contact. That was awkward. Sorry. He insisted on seeing the apartment, something about understanding the founder's journey or whatever. He seems nice. Married? Chelsea's hand stilled on the counter. What? Oh, yeah, I think so. Why? Just wondering. You spend a lot of time with him. She turned, and for a moment Patrick saw real fear in her eyes. Then she laughed, forced and hollow. God, Patrick, he's my mentor, that's all. You know you're the only one for me. The lie was so bold, so absolute, that Patrick felt a strange admiration. She looked him right in the eyes and lied with her whole heart. It was almost beautiful, like watching a virus execute its code perfectly. I know, he said. I trust you completely. Relief washed over her face. She crossed to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Just one more week, baby, then everything changes. We'll have money, success, everything we dreamed of. Patrick held her, smelling Scott's cologne in her hair. Everything we dreamed of, he repeated. That night, Chelsea fell asleep quickly, exhausted from juggling her lies. Patrick lay beside her, counting down. 7 days, 168 hours, 10,080 minutes until the timer ran out and the bomb he'd built from evidence and broken promises would explode. He thought about Scott's handshake, firm and confident. The man had no idea what was coming. None of them did. They thought Patrick was just the boring husband, the beta provider, the fool who worked overtime to fund his wife's affair. They were wrong. He wasn't the fool. He was the debugger. And in 7 days, he would show them all exactly what happened when you treated people like disposable code, Chelsea murmured in her sleep, curling away from him. Patrick stared at the ceiling, at the water stain that had now spread to look like a map of some ruined continent. 7 more days in this broken place. 7 more days of pretending. Then, finally, the crash. 5 days before the party, Patrick sat in a Denny's parking lot at 2 a.m., having just dropped off his last Uber passenger. His earnings for the night, $126. His savings account balance, $0. His marriage, running on fumes and lies. His phone rang. Unknown number, but he recognized the Texas area code. Mr. Chen? This is Amanda Morrison, Scott Morrison's wife. Patrick's throat went dry. How did you get this number? My husband is many things, Mr. Chen, but careful with his phone isn't one of them. Her voice was steady, controlled, with a hint of southern steel. I know about Chelsea. I know about all of them, and I think we should talk. They met the next morning at a coffee shop in Los Gatos, far enough from San Jose to avoid running into anyone they knew. Amanda Morrison looked exactly like what Patrick expected, polished, blonde, with the kind of aggressive maintenance that money could buy. But her eyes were redrimmed, her designer handbag clutched too tightly. How long have you known? Patrick asked. 3 months, private investigator. She laughed bitterly. 15 years of marriage, 2 kids, and he's throwing it away for her. What do you want from me? Amanda leaned forward. I want to destroy him, financially, socially, completely. And I think you want the same thing with her. I've already been to the police. The police will handle the criminal charges. I'm talking about something more. Thorough. She pulled out an iPad, showing him screenshots. I've been documenting everything. Scott's been using his company to funnel money to multiple women. Your wife isn't the only one. There's a girl in Portland, another in Phoenix. He sets them up with fake businesses, has sex with them, then moves on when he gets bored. Patrick stared at the evidence. Chelsea thinks they're running away together to Texas. Oh, honey. Amanda's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. The only place Scott's running is bankruptcy court. I've already frozen our assets, filed for divorce, and contacted his business partners. By December 15th, Morrison Logistics will be worthless paper. Why tell me? Because I want Chelsea to know she destroyed her life for nothing. I want her to realize she was just another entry in my husband's spreadsheet of affairs. Amanda's voice cracked slightly. Is that petty? Probably. Do I care? Not even a little. Patrick thought about it. Adding Amanda's evidence to his own would make the case ironclad. But more than that, it would show Chelsea the true cost of her choices, that she'd burned down their marriage for a man who collected women like Pokemon cards. What do you need me to do? Amanda smiled. Just what you're already planning, but maybe add a few slides to your presentation. I'll send you everything. They shook hands, two betrayed spouses forming an alliance over overpriced coffee and shared destruction. That afternoon, Patrick was reviewing test cases at work when his manager Jennifer knocked on his cubicle. "Patrick, can we talk?" He followed her to a conference room, already knowing what was coming. "Your performance has been declining for months," Jennifer said gently. "Missed deadlines, sloppy test documentation, calling in sick. What's going on?" Patrick considered lying, but he was so tired of lies. "My wife is having an affair. She's also committing fraud. I'm getting divorced. I'm driving Uber at night to pay bills. I'm sorry, Jennifer. I know I've been letting the team down." Jennifer's expression softened. "Why didn't you say something?" "We have Resources Employee Assistance Program, flexible scheduling." "Pride, I guess. Stupidity. Thinking I could handle it. Take the rest of the week off. Paid. Get your affairs in order." She paused. "No pun intended. When you come back, we'll work out a plan. You're too good an engineer to lose over this." Patrick felt his eyes burn. After months of Chelsea's lies, someone showing him basic human kindness nearly broke him. "Thank you." "Been there," Jennifer said quietly. "My ex-husband cleaned out our accounts for his gambling addiction. I know what it's like to watch someone you love become a stranger." That evening, Patrick came home to find the apartment transformed. Chelsea had decorated for the party banners, product displays, a vision board showing her company's journey to success. She was in the kitchen, humming while arranging organic soap samples. "What do you think?" she asked, spinning to show him the setup. "Professional enough?" "It's perfect," Patrick said, meaning it. It was the perfect stage for what was coming. "I'm so nervous," Chelsea admitted, fidgeting with a display. "What if no one shows up? What if the acquisition falls through?" "Everything will work out exactly as it should," Patrick assured her. She hugged him then, tight and desperate. "I don't deserve you." For once, Patrick thought she was telling the truth. That night, while Chelsea slept, Patrick added Amanda Morrison's evidence to his presentation. Screenshots of Scott with other women. Financial records showing the pattern of fraud across multiple states. A particularly damning email where Scott referred to Chelsea as Acquisition Target 6. He also wrote 2 letters. One to Chelsea, to be read after everything exploded, trying to explain why he'd chosen this path. One to himself, a reminder of why he was doing this when the guilt threatened to overwhelm him. 3 more days. Outside, rain began to fall, the first real storm of the winter. Patrick listened to it drum against the windows, washing the Bay Area clean. He wondered if anything could wash away what was coming, if there was enough rain in the world to make any of them clean again. Chelsea stirred, reaching for him in her sleep. "Patrick? I'm here. Love you," she mumbled, already drifting back under. Patrick didn't respond. Love was just another word for the bug in the system, the error in the code that had led them all to this moment. In 3 days, he would deploy the fix. He just hoped there would be something left worth saving when the program finished running. December 13th, 2 days before the party. Patrick woke to find Chelsea already gone, a note on her pillow. "Early morning with Scott and Victoria, setting up vendor meetings. You're my rock." He crumpled the note and threw it away. Then he retrieved it from the trash, smoothed it out, and added it to his evidence folder. Even her love notes were evidence now. His phone showed 17 missed calls from a number he didn't recognize. Finally, it rang again. "Patrick Chen?" The voice was professional, clipped. "Yes?" "This is David Liu from the SEC's Enforcement Division. We've been notified about potential securities fraud involving Chelsea's Organics. I understand you've been in contact with local law enforcement?" Patrick's hands went cold. "How did you—" "Mrs. Amanda Morrison filed a complaint yesterday. She provided extensive documentation about her husband's activities, including your wife's company. We'd like to meet before December 15th, the federal government. This was bigger than Patrick had imagined. I can meet today." That afternoon, Patrick sat in a federal building in San Francisco, watching 3 SEC investigators review his evidence. David Liu led the questioning, his expression growing more severe with each revealed detail. The acquisition offer for $10 million, do you have documentation? Patrick showed them the emails, the contracts Victoria had drawn up, the offshore account information. It's all fake, isn't it? The buyer? Shell Company registered in the Caymans 2 weeks ago, Liu confirmed. They were going to take investor money, claim the acquisition fell through, and disappear with the funds. Classic exit scam. How much did they steal? Liu consulted his notes. Based on what Mrs. Morrison provided and your documentation across all of Scott Morrison's schemes, approximately $1.2 million over 3 years. Your wife's company accounts for about $180,000 of that. $180,000. Patrick thought about their empty bank account, his maxed credit cards, the nights driving Uber while Chelsea was in motel rooms with Scott. All for $180,000 that she'd never even see. What happens now? Patrick asked. We'll coordinate with the FBI and local law enforcement. December 15th, multiple arrests will be made simultaneously. Morrison in Texas, your wife, and Victoria Lang here. Liu paused. You should know Chelsea could face up to 20 years in federal prison for wire fraud. 20 years. Patrick felt the number hit him like a physical blow. When he'd started this, he'd thought maybe she'd get probation, community service. But 20 years? I need to think. Mr. Chen. Liu's voice softened slightly. I know this is difficult, but your wife made choices, serious criminal choices. You're doing the right thing. Patrick left the federal building in a daze. 20 years. Chelsea would be over 50 when she got out. Their entire future, the life they'd planned, children they'd never have, all gone for $180,000, and a man who thought of her as Acquisition Target 6. He drove to Ocean Beach, needing to see something vast and unchanging. The Pacific stretched out gray and endless, waves crashing with indifferent violence against the shore. Patrick stood in the wind and tried to feel something other than hollow. His phone rang. Chelsea. Baby, where are you? I'm at the apartment. Thought we could have dinner together, just us. Like old times. I'm in the city. Work thing. Oh, she sounded disappointed. Well, hurry home. I have something to tell you. Patrick found her cooking when he arrived home, real cooking, not takeout. The apartment smelled like garlic and ginger, like the early days when they'd dance around each other in the tiny kitchen, stealing kisses between stirring pots. Sit, Chelsea commanded, pouring him wine. I'm making your favorite. Beef and broccoli, extra spicy. Patrick sat, watching her move around their kitchen with practiced ease. She looked happy, genuinely happy, humming that same song from when they'd first met. What's the occasion? Chelsea turned, her face glowing. I've been thinking about us, about everything, and I've made a decision. Patrick's heart stopped. Was she going to confess? Come clean? After the acquisition goes through, I want us to start trying for a baby. The wine glass slipped from Patrick's hand, shattering on the floor. Red wine spread across the linoleum like blood. Oh, careful! Chelsea grabbed paper towels, kneeling to clean the mess. I know it's sudden, but I've been so focused on the business, I forgot what really matters. Family. Us. Patrick stared at her. This woman planning futures with children, while simultaneously planning to run away with another man. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. Chelsea, I know we said we'd wait until we were financially stable, but we will be. And you'll be such a good dad, Patrick. Patient, kind, supportive. She looked up at him from the floor, surrounded by wine stains and broken glass. What do you think? What did he think? He thought she was either the world's best liar or completely delusional, maybe both. Let's get through the party first, he managed. Of course. God, I'm so nervous about that. What if something goes wrong? Patrick helped her to her feet. Nothing will go wrong. Everything will happen exactly as it's supposed to. They ate dinner, Chelsea chattering about baby names and nursery colors while Patrick nodded and made appropriate noises. She was building castles in the sky, unaware that the ground beneath her was already crumbling. That night, she initiated intimacy for the first time in months. Patrick couldn't bring himself to respond. Is it me? She asked in the darkness. Have I been so awful that you don't want me anymore? It's not you, Patrick lied. Just stressed about work. After the party, everything will be better. You'll see. We'll have money, success, a family, everything we dreamed of in that crappy Vegas hotel room. Patrick stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow was December 14th. One more day of pretending. One more day of listening to her spin fantasies while planning betrayal. Chelsea? Do you ever regret anything? She was quiet for so long he thought she'd fallen asleep. Then, I regret not believing in myself sooner. I regret wasting years at jobs I hated. But everything led me here, to this moment, to this success, so no, not really. What about us? Any regrets there? Chelsea rolled over, finding his hand in the darkness. My only regret is not being a better wife while building the business. But you understood. You always understand. That's why I love you. Patrick squeezed her hand, memorizing the feeling. Tomorrow would be their last full day as husband and wife. The day after, she'd be in federal custody. I love you too, he said, and found that buried under all the anger and betrayal and hurt, a part of it was still true. He loved who she used to be. He loved who he'd thought she was. He loved the dream they'd shared, even if it had become a nightmare. Chelsea fell asleep holding his hand. Patrick lay awake, counting down the hours. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the world washed and waiting. One more day. Then the debugging would be complete, and everyone would see what happened when you built your life on corrupted code. December 14th arrived gray and ordinary, like any other Friday in the Bay Area. Patrick woke at 5 a.m., his body trained by months of early Uber shifts. Beside him, Chelsea slept peacefully, one arm thrown across the space where he used to be. He studied her face in the dim light, the small scar above her left eyebrow from a childhood fall, the way her lips parted slightly when she dreamed. Tomorrow, this face would contort with shock, rage, despair. Tomorrow, everything would change. He slipped out of bed and made coffee in the dark kitchen. Through the window, the first commuters were already heading to 101, red tail lights streaming toward jobs they probably hated but couldn't afford to leave. Patrick understood that trap intimately now. His phone buzzed. A text from his friend Kevin. Still need us at the thing tomorrow? Yes. 2 p.m. Don't be late. You sure about this, man? Once you light this fuse. Patrick didn't respond. The fuse was already lit, had been since the moment he saw Chelsea's car at that motel. By 7 a.m., Chelsea was up, buzzing around the apartment like a caffeinated hummingbird. She'd laid out 3 different outfits on the bed, holding each up to herself in the mirror. Which one says successful entrepreneur but still approachable? She asked. Patrick pointed to a navy dress he'd bought her 2 Christmases ago, back when they still exchanged real gifts instead of lies. Perfect. You always know. She kissed his cheek, leaving a trace of lipstick he didn't bother to wipe off. I'm meeting Victoria at 9 to go over the final numbers. Then Scott's flying in from Dallas this afternoon. Can you believe it's really happening? No, Patrick said honestly. I really can't. Chelsea was too excited to notice his tone. She chattered on about RSVPs, catering arrangements, her presentation slides. Patrick nodded at appropriate intervals, marveling at her ability to juggle multiple realities. In her mind, she was simultaneously a devoted wife planning for children and a woman preparing to flee with her lover. The cognitive dissonance should have given her a migraine. After she left, Patrick called in sick to work. Jennifer didn't question it, she knew what tomorrow was. He spent the morning doing mundane tasks with the focus of a man preparing for war. Cleaned the apartment, did laundry, paid what bills he could with his meager remaining funds. Each action felt like a goodbye. At noon, his phone rang. Timothy Walsh, his lawyer. Patrick, I've reviewed everything with the prosecutor. Given the evidence, they're confident of conviction. Chelsea's looking at minimum 5 years, possibly 10 with the federal charges. What about restitution? The investors will likely recover some funds, but not all. These things get messy. Patrick, I need to ask again. Are you certain you want to do this publicly? We could still handle it privately, minimize the spectacle. Patrick thought about Chelsea's aunt who'd invested her retirement savings, about Danielle Park facing eviction, about his own maxed credit cards and empty bank account. They did this publicly, he said, taking money from friends, family, anyone who trusted them. The accounting should be public too. After hanging up, Patrick drove to his parents' house. His mother was in the kitchen, preparing enough food to feed an army her way of handling stress. "I made your favorite," she said in Mandarin, not looking at him. "Beef noodle soup. Like when you were sick as a child?" "I'm not sick, Ma." "No?" She finally met his eyes. "Your heart isn't broken? Your spirit isn't wounded? There are different kinds of sickness, son." They ate in silence, the familiar flavors bringing unexpected tears to Patrick's eyes. His father joined them, solid and quiet, radiating the kind of steady support that didn't need words. "After tomorrow," his father finally said, "you stay here as long as you need. Your room is ready." Patrick nodded, not trusting his voice. They knew. The whole family knew. Chelsea's parents would be there tomorrow too, their investment gone, their daughter exposed, the ripples of betrayal spreading through both families like cracks in glass. His phone buzzed constantly throughout the day. Chelsea sending updates, photos of the venue setup, excitement bleeding through every text. Victoria confirming final arrangements with careful wording. Even Scott, bold enough to text from his Dallas number. "Looking forward to celebrating your wife's success tomorrow." Patrick screenshotted that one too. Evidence until the very end. By evening, he was back at the apartment, watching Chelsea try on jewelry, debate shoes, practice her presentation one more time. She was radiant with anticipation, glowing with the promise of tomorrow's triumph. "I'm nervous," she admitted, fidgeting with her wedding ring. "What if something goes wrong?" "Nothing will go wrong," Patrick assured her. "Everything will go exactly as planned." "You're right. Scott says I overthink things." She paused, catching herself. "I mean, from a business perspective." "Of course." They ordered Chinese takeout, their Friday tradition from the early days. Chelsea picked at her food, too excited to eat. Patrick mechanically consumed his orange chicken, tasting nothing. "Remember our first apartment?" Chelsea said suddenly. "That studio in Sunnyvale with the broken AC? And the neighbor who played drums at 3 a.m. God, we were so broke. But happy, you know. We had nothing but each other, and it was enough." She looked at him with something that might have been regret. When did it stop being enough? Patrick could have given her an exact date, could have shown her the credit card statement with the first Motel 6 charge. Instead, he said, "Things change. But we don't have to, right? We can still be those people who were happy with nothing." The irony was suffocating. Here she was, hours before abandoning him, waxing nostalgic about their poverty. Patrick wondered if she actually believed her own performance, or if this was just another manipulation. "We should get some sleep," he said. "Big day tomorrow." Chelsea cleaned up the takeout containers while Patrick pretended to review work emails. Normal domestic choreography, performed for the last time. When they went to bed, she curled against him, fitting into the familiar spaces like she belonged there. "Patrick?" "Yeah? Thank you. For everything. For believing in me when no one else did. For sacrificing so much. I know I haven't been the best wife lately. But after tomorrow, I promise things will be different." Patrick stared at the ceiling, at the water stain that had become his constant companion. "I know they will." Chelsea fell asleep quickly, but Patrick lay awake counting down hours. In 12 hours, she'd be getting ready, choosing that navy dress. In 16 hours, she'd be standing at the microphone, basking in false success. In 17 hours, his presentation would begin. In 18 hours, the FBI would arrive. He thought about Kevin's text, "Once you light this fuse." But the fuse had been lit the moment Chelsea chose another man over their marriage. Patrick was just making sure everyone could see the explosion. Outside, a dog barked. A car alarm went off. The sounds of suburban life continuing, unaware that tomorrow, in a community center in San Jose, one marriage would publicly detonate, taking multiple lives down with it. Patrick closed his eyes, not to sleep, but to practice. Tomorrow, he would need to be calm, composed, clear. Tomorrow, he would stand before family and strangers and systematically destroy the woman sleeping beside him. The thought should have brought satisfaction. Instead, it only brought a deep, aching sadness for what they'd all lost in pursuit of something that was never real. But sadness wouldn't stop him. Tomorrow would come whether he was ready or not. And Patrick Chen, QA engineer, had found all the bugs in the system. Time to show everyone the fatal errors. December 15th dawned clear and cold, the kind of California morning that pretended to be winter. Patrick had been awake since 4 a.m., sitting in the dark living room with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. His phone showed 127 unread messages in the tax documents 2018 inches folder, every piece of evidence, backed up one final time. Chelsea emerged from the bedroom at 7 a.m., already vibrating with nervous energy. She'd slept fitfully, tossing and turning, occasionally murmuring Scott's name. Patrick had lain still beside her, memorizing the sound of her breathing, the weight of her presence. After today, the bed would be half empty. "Morning, baby." She kissed him quickly, tasting of mint toothpaste and anxiety. "Can you believe it's finally here?" "No," Patrick said. "I really can't." She was too amped to notice his flat tone, already mentally at the community center. "I need to pick up the flowers, check with the caterer, make sure the projection system works. Victoria's meeting me there at 10. Oh, and Scott's flight lands at noon. Can you believe he's flying in just for this?" "Dedicated mentor," Patrick observed. "Right?" Chelsea beamed, missing the irony entirely. "I'm so lucky to have him. And you, my two biggest supporters." Patrick watched her flutter around the apartment, gathering materials, checking lists, texting constantly. She'd chosen the navy dress after all, paired with the jewelry he'd given her over years of anniversaries and birthdays. Diamonds earned through overtime and sacrifice, now worn to celebrate a betrayal. "You look beautiful," he said, meaning it. Chelsea paused, something flickering across her face. "Patrick, are you okay? You seem different today. Just thinking about how far we've come. From that Starbucks to this." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Sometimes I can barely believe it myself." Neither could Patrick. That laughing barista who'd charmed him with free coffee refills had morphed into this stranger wearing his wife's face. Evolution or corruption, he still couldn't decide which. By 9 a.m., Chelsea was gone, leaving behind the scent of her perfume and a note. "See you at 2. Bring your smile. Love you." Patrick crumpled the note, then smoothed it out and added it to his evidence folder. Even her goodbye was evidence now. He spent the morning methodically preparing. Shower, shave, iron his only good suit, the one from their wedding, now loose from months of stress. Pack his laptop with the presentation that would destroy her. Text his support team to confirm their attendance. "Kevin, we'll be there. You sure about this?" Michael, his cousin. "Got the printouts. This is really happening?" His parents. "We're leaving now. Whatever happens, we love you." At 11 a.m., Timothy Walsh called. "The authorities are in position. FBI, SEC, local police. They'll wait for your signal before moving in." "How will I signal?" "Just play your presentation. They'll be watching. Patrick, last chance to back out." "Would you? If it was your wife?" Timothy sighed. "No. I'd probably do exactly what you're doing. Good luck." Patrick drove to the community center slowly, taking surface streets instead of the freeway. Each red light felt like a stay of execution. He passed the Starbucks where they'd met, the church where they'd married, the park where they'd dreamed about their future. A greatest hits tour of a relationship about to flatline. The community center parking lot was already half full when he arrived at 1:30. He recognized cars: Chelsea's parents' sensible Honda, his aunt's Lexus, various investors and friends drawn by the promise of Chelsea's success. Patrick sat in his car, watching people stream in, dressed in their business casual best. His phone rang. "Chelsea, where are you? People are arriving and I need you here." "Parking now. Hurry!" "And Patrick, I love you. I know I've been distracted with the business, but you're my rock. I couldn't have done any of this without you." The lie came so easily, wrapped in truth just enough to sting. Patrick ended the call and grabbed his laptop bag. Time to go. The community center was transformed. Professional banners reading "Chelsea's Organics Natural Beauty, Ethical Business" hung from every wall. Product displays lined tables draped in white cloth. A small stage had been set up at the front, complete with podium and projection screen. It looked legitimate, professional, real, the perfect facade for a fraud. "Patrick!" Chelsea rushed over, radiant in her navy dress. "You're here!" "Doesn't everything look amazing?" "It's perfect," he agreed, scanning the room. There was Victoria by the registration table, tablet in hand, recording investors as they arrived. Scott near the stage, expensive suit and wedding ring gleaming, playing the successful businessman. Various friends and family mingling, champagne already flowing. "I saved you a seat up front," Chelsea said, squeezing his hand. "I want you close when I make the announcement." "I'll be right there," Patrick promised. He moved through the crowd, accepting condolences disguised as congratulations. Chelsea's aunt grabbed his arm, eyes shining. "So proud of you both. My investment is going to help so many people access natural beauty products." Patrick managed not to tell her that her $20,000 retirement savings had already been spent on hotel rooms and offshore accounts. "Chelsea's worked very hard," he said instead. His parents sat in the back row, his mother clutching his father's hand. They nodded when they saw him, a silent promise of support. Kevin and Michael flanked them, looking uncomfortable in their business casual disguises. At 2:15, Victoria tapped the microphone. "Everyone, please take your seats. We're about to begin." Patrick sat in the front row as promised, laptop bag at his feet. His hands were steady. His heartbeat was not. On stage, Chelsea glowed under the lights, shuffling note cards she wouldn't need. She knew her lies by heart. "Welcome, everyone," Chelsea began, her voice carrying easily through the room. "I can't tell you how much it means to have you all here, supporting not just a business, but a dream." Applause rippled through the audience. Patrick counted faces, about 40 people, each representing money stolen, trust betrayed, futures compromised. 6 months ago, I was just another corporate drone, writing marketing copy for products I didn't believe in. Today, thanks to your faith and investment, Chelsea's Organics is about to be acquired for $10 million. Gasps. Applause. Victoria started a standing ovation that spread through the room. Patrick stood too, clapping mechanically. Behind them, he noticed 2 men in suits who hadn't been there before. Federal agents, waiting. Chelsea waited for the noise to die down, then continued. "None of this would have been possible without the people who believed in me. My mentor, Scott Morrison, who saw potential where others saw just another startup." Scott stood, waving modestly. His wedding ring caught the light. "My brilliant CFO, Victoria Lang, who structured this deal beautifully." More applause for Victoria, who bowed slightly, calculator smile in place. "And most of all," Chelsea's voice caught, "my amazing husband, Patrick. Baby, could you stand up?" Patrick rose, turning to face the room. 40 pairs of eyes on him, seeing the supportive spouse, the good man, the fool who'd funded his wife's affair with overtime and Uber rides. "This man," Chelsea continued, "quit his job at Google to support my dream. He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. He's the real hero of this story." The lie was so bold, so complete, that Patrick almost admired it. She'd rewritten history in real time, turning his $95,000 QA engineer salary into a Google career, his desperate second job into voluntary sacrifice. "Patrick, would you like to say a few words?" Chelsea asked. This was it, the moment. Patrick walked to the stage, kissed his wife's cheek, and took the microphone. The room waited expectantly. "Thank you, Chelsea. That was quite a story." He paused, looking out at the assembled crowd. "In fact, it's such a good story I thought we should examine it more closely. I've prepared a short presentation about the real journey of Chelsea's Organics." Chelsea's smile flickered. "Honey, I don't think—" "Please, sit down, sweetheart. This won't take long." The edge in his voice made her step back. She sat in a chair on stage, confusion replacing confidence. Victoria half stood, sensing danger, but Patrick was already connecting his laptop to the projection system. "You see," Patrick said conversationally, "I'm a QA engineer, not at Google, at a mid-sized software company where I make $95,000 a year. My job is to find bugs in systems. And folks, I've found quite a few bugs in this one." The first slide appeared. A photo of the Motel 6 on El Camino Real. Let's start with debugging the mentorship relationship, shall we? The room had gone completely silent. Chelsea's face drained of color as she recognized what was coming, but it was too late to run. The fuse had reached the explosive. Time for the boom. The Motel 6 photo hung on the screen like an accusation. Patrick clicked to the next slide, Chelsea's Honda and Scott's Mercedes in the parking lot, date and timestamp clearly visible. This is where my wife received her business mentoring. Every Tuesday and Thursday, sometimes Saturdays. His voice was conversational, professorial even. Interesting curriculum, wouldn't you say? Patrick, stop. Chelsea stood, her voice shaking. This isn't what you think. Oh, I'm just getting started. Click. Credit card statements. Let's talk about startup expenses. Victoria's Secret, probably for investor meetings. Nordstrom to look professional. Hotels, dinners, gifts. All while I was driving Uber until 3 a.m. to pay our rent. The audience sat frozen. Chelsea's parents in the third row looked stricken. Her mother had covered her mouth with both hands. Patrick, please. Scott stood now, moving toward the stage. Sit down, Mr. Morrison. Patrick's voice cracked like a whip. We'll get to you. Click. The business bank statements. $20,000 investment from Scott Morrison. Current balance, $347. Where did the money go? Victoria was edging toward the exit. Kevin and Michael moved to block her path. Let's see. $5,000 transferred to a Cayman Islands account. $3,000 in cash withdrawals. $2,400 in unpaid developer fees to Danielle Park, who's facing eviction because of it. Patrick looked at Chelsea. Did you know she has a daughter? 8 years old. About to be homeless because you needed money for your affair. It's not I can explain. Click. The recovered text messages filled the screen. Can't stop thinking about last night. You're incredible. Scott. Patrick's working late again. Come over. Chelsea. Once the acquisition goes through, we'll have enough to start fresh. Texas is beautiful this time of year. Scott gasps rippled through the room. Someone started crying, one of the investors realizing their money was gone. But wait, Patrick said, his voice gaining strength. There's more. The acquisition? The $10 million? Let me introduce you to the buyer. Click. Corporate registration documents. Shell Company. Registered 2 weeks ago in the Cayman Islands. Beneficial owner? Scott Morrison. The plan was simple, fake an acquisition, take your investment money, and disappear. That's not true. Chelsea's voice was desperate now. Scott, tell them. But Scott was already moving toward the exit, only to find 2 men in suits blocking his way. Going somewhere, Mr. Morrison? One of them asked, FBI badge visible. The room erupted. Investors shouting, chairs scraping, Chelsea's mother wailing in Mandarin. Through it all, Patrick continued his presentation, methodical as any QA report. Click. Let's talk about Victoria Lang's role. Fake invoices, doctored books, tax evasion through unreported income. Victoria had gone pale, her calculator fingers finally still. Click. Total stolen from investors, $180,000. From family, friends, retirees who believed in an organic beauty dream. Patrick, stop! Chelsea was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Why are you doing this? Why? Patrick finally looked at her directly. Because you asked me to support your dreams. So I did. I documented everything, tested every claim, found every bug. His voice broke. I loved you, Chelsea. I would have given you anything. Instead, you took everything. I love you too. This is all a misunderstanding. Don't. The word cut her off. Just don't. Click. The final slide. A photo from their wedding day. Young, happy, poor, but hopeful. That's who we were, Patrick said quietly. Before you decided it wasn't enough. The FBI agents were moving now. One approached Scott, who was protesting loudly about lawyers and mistakes. Another moved toward Victoria, who sat frozen at the registration table. A third climbed the stage toward Chelsea. Mrs. Chen, you're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Patrick! Chelsea screamed as they cuffed her. How could you? I'm your wife. Were, Patrick corrected. You were my wife. You became something else the moment you chose him. The scene descended into chaos. Investors demanding answers. Press arriving, someone had called them. Chelsea's parents pushing through the crowd, her father's face a mask of fury and grief. You destroyed her! Chelsea's mother screamed at Patrick in Mandarin. She made mistakes, but you destroyed her! Patrick's own mother appeared, placing herself between them. Your daughter destroyed herself. My son just showed everyone the truth. As they led Chelsea away, she looked back one last time. Tears had destroyed her careful makeup, leaving her looking young and lost. I was going to choose you, she called out. In the end, I was going to choose you. Patrick didn't respond. He knew a final manipulation when he heard one. The bug trying one last exploit before the system shut down. Scott was in custody now, blustering about his rights, his lawyers, his connections. Victoria went quietly, her tablet clutched to her chest like a shield. The community center emptied slowly, investors clustering in shocked groups, trying to understand how they'd been fooled. Patrick's friends surrounded him, Kevin, Michael, his parents. A protective wall against the aftermath. You okay? Kevin asked. No, Patrick admitted, but I will be. His phone was exploding with notifications, texts, calls, emails. The video someone had taken was already on Reddit going viral. Tech wife startup scam exposed by husband at launch party. Patrick turned off his phone. The debugging was complete. The bugs had been exposed, the system crashed, the bad code purged. What came next? The legal battles, the divorce, the rebuilding that was tomorrow's problem. Today, he'd done what he set out to do. The truth was deployed to production. Timothy Walsh appeared at his elbow. That was quite a presentation. You ready for what comes next? No, Patrick said again, but I'll handle it. One bug at a time. Outside, police cars filled the parking lot. Red and blue lights painting the California afternoon in emergency colors. Patrick walked to his car, each step feeling like shedding weight. The laptop bag felt empty now, its terrible purpose served. He sat in his car for a moment, looking at the community center where his marriage had publicly died. Then he started the engine and drove away, leaving behind the wreckage of Chelsea's organics and the life they'd built on lies. His parents' house waited, with its familiar smells and unconditional love. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and paperwork and the slow process of untangling two lives. But tonight, Patrick Chen would eat his mother's beef noodle soup and try to remember who he'd been before the bugs in the system had forced him to become someone else. The debugger had done his job. Now it was time to try being human again. The aftermath came in waves. First, the immediate chaos, Patrick's phone ringing non-stop until he finally turned it off. Then the media storm. Reporters camping outside his parents' house until his father chased them off with a garden hose and colorful Mandarin cursing. By evening, the video had been viewed over 1 million times, spawning countless memes and hot takes about startup culture, marriage, and revenge. Patrick sat in his childhood bedroom, staring at basketball posters from high school, trying to process what he'd done. The room felt like a time capsule from before Chelsea, before the marriage, before everything went wrong. His mother knocked gently. You should eat something. I'm not hungry, Ma. She entered anyway, carrying a tray with soup and tea. Hunger isn't the point. Eating is what we do to keep going. Patrick accepted the bowl, the familiar flavors grounding him in the present. Is it on the news? Every channel. His mother sat on the bed beside him. They're calling you the debugging husband. Your father thinks it's clever. And you? She was quiet for a moment. I think you did what you had to do, but I also think it broke your heart to do it. Patrick's eyes burned. She was supposed to love me, Ma. How did I miss all the signs? Love makes us stupid sometimes, but stupidity isn't permanent. You woke up. That's what matters. His phone, despite being off, somehow communicated that his voicemail was full. 57 missed calls. Over 200 texts. Patrick turned it back on just long enough to send one message to his manager. Taking that time off we discussed. We'll be in touch. Jennifer responded immediately. Take all the time you need. Your job will be here when you're ready. The next morning brought lawyers. Timothy Walsh arrived at 8 a.m. with a box of documents and a grim expression. Chelsea's been charged with 6 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of embezzlement, conspiracy to commit fraud, and tax evasion. The federal prosecutor is pushing for maximum sentences. With the evidence you provided, conviction is almost certain. How long? 10 to 15 years minimum. Maybe 20 if the judge considers the breach of marital trust an aggravating factor. Patrick felt the number like a physical blow. When he'd started this, he'd imagined Chelsea getting a few years, maybe probation. 20 years meant she'd be over 50 when she got out. Their entire future erased. What about the investors? The FBI is freezing all assets. They might recover 30 cents on the dollar if they're lucky. Your documentation will help with restitution claims. Timothy paused. Several investors want to thank you, actually. Without your evidence, they'd have lost everything with no recourse. And the divorce? Given the circumstances, it should be straightforward. California is a no-fault state, but the criminal activity changes things. You won't owe alimony, and you should receive a larger share of any remaining assets. There are no assets, just debt. Then at least you won't be responsible for her legal fees. Small comfort, I know. After Timothy left, Patrick forced himself to check his messages. Most were from reporters wanting his story. Delete, delete, delete. Some from friends offering support. A few from strangers who'd been through similar betrayals, sharing their own stories of survival. One voicemail made him pause. Danielle Park, the web developer. Patrick, I saw the news. I'm so sorry, but also, thank you. The FBI contacted me about restitution. I might actually get paid. You saved my daughter and me from eviction. I know this must be hell for you, but you did the right thing. Patrick played it twice, then saved it. He'd need reminders in the dark days ahead that something good had come from all this destruction. His cousin Michael stopped by that afternoon with updates from the outside world. Scott's wife filed for divorce. Took the kids and moved back to Houston. She's also suing him for everything apparently Texas doesn't play when it comes to adultery. Good for her. Victoria flipped. Full cooperation with the feds in exchange for a lighter sentence. She's giving them everything other schemes Scott was running. Offshore accounts. The works. And Chelsea? Michael hesitated. Her lawyer is pushing for a plea deal, claiming emotional manipulation by Scott, that she was a victim too. Patrick laughed bitterly. A victim who planned to abandon her husband and steal hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah, the prosecutor isn't buying it either, especially with your evidence showing she was actively planning the fraud. That evening, Patrick ventured out for the first time since the party. He needed air, space, movement. He drove aimlessly through San Jose, past landmarks of his former life. The apartment building already Chelsea's things were being moved out by her brother, who couldn't meet Patrick's eyes. The Starbucks where they'd met, he didn't stop. The community center now bearing no trace of yesterday's drama. He ended up at the beach again, the same spot where he'd stood after learning about the potential 20-year sentence. The ocean was indifferent to human drama, waves continuing their ancient rhythm. Patrick walked until his legs ached, then sat on a piece of driftwood and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of ending. His phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. Patrick? This is Janet Chen, Chelsea's aunt, the one who invested. Patrick braced himself for anger, accusations, blame. I wanted to thank you, she said instead. I know that sounds strange, but if you hadn't exposed this, I'd have invested more. My whole retirement. You saved me from complete ruin. I'm sorry about your 20,000. Money can be replaced. Trust, once truly broken, cannot. You showed us who she really was. That's worth more than money. After she hung up, Patrick sat in the gathering darkness, processing this unexpected grace. He'd prepared for hatred from Chelsea's family, not gratitude. But then, nothing about this followed the script he'd imagined. A text from his mother. Dinner in 30 minutes, your favorite. Patrick drove home his parents' home, but home nonetheless. Tomorrow would bring more lawyers, more paperwork, more aftermath. The criminal trials would drag on for months. The divorce would be its own special hell. He'd have to find a new apartment, rebuild his finances, learn to trust again. But tonight, he'd eat his mother's cooking and let his father tell bad jokes and maybe watch a Warriors game together. Simple things, real things, Things that didn't require debugging because they'd never been corrupted in the first place. The explosion was over. Now came the harder part, building something new from the rubble. 6 months later, Patrick sat in a federal courthouse in San Francisco, watching his soon-to-be ex-wife take the stand. Chelsea wore orange now instead of designer dresses, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. The confident entrepreneur was gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed woman who looked every day of her 32 years and then some. "Mrs. Chen," the prosecutor began, "did you or did you not tell investors that their money would be used for business development?" "I did, but... And was that money instead used for personal expenses, including hotel rooms for your affair with Mr. Morrison?" Chelsea's lawyer objected. Overruled. Patrick watched her squirm on the stand, caught between truth and the lies she'd lived for so long. Strange how he felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not anger, not even pity. Just nothing. Like watching a stranger in a movie about someone else's life. The trial had been grinding on for 3 weeks. Scott Morrison had been tried separately, found guilty on all counts, sentenced to 12 years federal time. His wife Amanda had been at that sentencing, front row, wearing what looked like a celebration dress. She'd caught Patrick's eye and raised her coffee cup in a mock toast. Victoria Lang had pled guilty, testified against both Chelsea and Scott, received 3 years with possibility of parole in 18 months. She'd apologized to Patrick outside the courthouse, mascara running down her face. "I got caught up in it," she'd said. "The money, the lifestyle, I forgot who I was hurting." Patrick hadn't responded. What was there to say? Now it was Chelsea's turn. Her lawyer had constructed a defense around emotional manipulation, claiming Scott had preyed on her entrepreneurial dreams. The prosecutor methodically destroyed it with Patrick's evidence texts, showing Chelsea initiating meetings, emails where she suggested the offshore accounts, recordings where she laughed about Patrick's naivety. "I was confused," Chelsea said from the stand, her voice small. "I loved my husband, but I also wanted more. Scott promised—" "What did your husband promise?" the prosecutor interrupted. "When he supported your business? When he worked 2 jobs to pay bills? When he believed in you completely?" Chelsea's eyes found Patrick in the gallery. For a moment, he saw the girl from the coffee shop, young and ambitious and full of dreams. Then she looked away. "He promised to love me," she whispered, "and I threw it away." The admission hung in the courtroom like smoke. Even the prosecutor seemed momentarily thrown by the raw honesty. Patrick left during the lunch break. He'd heard enough. Timothy Walsh found him in the hallway. "You don't have to be here for the rest," his lawyer said. "The divorce papers are ready. She's agreed to everything, no contest, no alimony, clean break. What's left to divide? Debt? Actually, the FBI recovered more than expected. About $40,000 from the offshore accounts. It'll go to restitution, but you're listed as a victim too. You might see $10,000 or so. $10,000. The price of a marriage, apparently." Patrick signed where Timothy indicated, officially ending 6 years of marriage with a few pen strokes. It felt anticlimactic. No drama, no tears, just paperwork converting a union back to 2 separate people. Outside the courthouse, Patrick ran into a familiar face. Danielle Park, the web developer, looking healthier than when he'd last seen her. "Patrick, I was testifying for the prosecution." She smiled, then caught herself. "Sorry, this must be weird for you." "Everything's weird now. How's your daughter?" "Good. Great, actually. We didn't get evicted thanks to you, and I got partial payment from the restitution fund." She hesitated. "I heard you're divorced now?" "As of about 5 minutes ago, yeah. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't help, but I'm sorry." They stood awkwardly for a moment, 2 casualties of Chelsea's ambition making small talk in a federal building. "Listen," Danielle said, "I know this is probably too soon, but my daughter's school is having a coding fair. They need volunteer judges. I thought maybe, if you're looking for something positive to do." Patrick considered it. He'd been hiding at his parents' house for 6 months, going to work and therapy and nowhere else. Maybe it was time to rejoin the world. "When is it?" "Next Saturday. I can text you the details." She paused. "Only if you want. No pressure." "Yeah, okay, that sounds nice." Danielle smiled, and Patrick realized he couldn't remember the last time someone had smiled at him without pity or morbid curiosity. "Great, I'll text you." After she left, Patrick stood on the courthouse steps, watching the city move around him. 6 months ago, he'd destroyed his life in public. Now, quietly and without fanfare, he was free. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Divorce final? Good. Come home. I made dumplings." Patrick smiled despite everything. Home, dumplings, simple things that mattered. The sentencing came 2 weeks later. Patrick didn't attend, but the news covered it extensively. Chelsea Chen, startup fraudster, sentenced to 8 years federal prison with possibility of parole in 5. The judge cited the breach of marital trust as an aggravating factor, but also considered her cooperation and apparent remorse. 8 years. When she got out, she'd be 40. Patrick would be 43. Their 30s, the prime years they'd planned to spend building their life together, would be gone. He'd be someone else entirely. She'd be. Who knew what prison would make of her? That night, Patrick sat with his parents watching the news coverage. Chelsea being led away in shackles, head down, her parents weeping in the background. "It's over now," his father said firmly. "Time to move forward." "Bah, how do you move forward from something like this?" His father was quiet for a moment. "One day at a time, one foot in front of the other. You're not the first man to be betrayed, and you won't be the last. The question is, will you let it define you, or will you define yourself?" Patrick thought about Danielle's coding fair invitation, about his promotion at work, about the small apartment he'd started looking at, nothing fancy but his own space. Baby steps toward a life that didn't revolve around Chelsea's betrayal. "I want to define myself," he said. "Then do it," his mother said simply. "Starting tomorrow." But Patrick thought maybe he'd already started, the moment he'd stood up at that community center and chosen truth over comfortable lies. It had been devastating, but it had also been the beginning of becoming someone new. Someone who didn't accept bugs in the system. Someone who could rebuild from clean code. The news moved on to other stories. Patrick's parents changed the channel to a cooking show. Life, it seemed, kept going whether you were ready or not, and for the first time in months, Patrick thought he might be ready. 1 year after the party, Patrick stood in his new apartment, hanging the last picture on the wall. It wasn't much, a 1-bedroom in Fremont, farther from work but all he could afford while rebuilding his credit. The walls were bare except for a single photo, him and his parents at his recent promotion celebration. Senior QA engineer, $130,000 salary. Not Google money, but honest money. His money. The apartment smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. No water stains on the ceiling. No memories lurking in corners. Just empty space waiting to be filled with a different life. His doorbell rang the first visitor to his new place. Danielle Park stood outside with a potted plant and her daughter Emma. "Housewarming gift," Danielle said, handing him the plant. "It's supposed to be impossible to kill." "You underestimate my abilities," Patrick said, but he was smiling. "Come in. It's not much to see yet." Emma, now 9, immediately gravitated to his gaming setup in the corner. "Cool, is that the new Nintendo?" "Emma, manners," Danielle chided. "It's fine, and yes, it is. Want to try it?" While Emma played, Patrick and Danielle sat at his small dining table, drinking coffee from mismatched mugs, all he had so far. "How are you doing?" "Really?" Danielle asked. Patrick considered the question. A year ago, it would have sent him spiraling. Now he could answer honestly. Better. Not great, but better. Therapy helps. Work helps. Having my own space helps. He gestured around the sparse apartment. "It's not the house with the lemon tree, but it's mine." "The house with the lemon tree?" "Something Chelsea and I used to dream about. Seems silly now." "Dreams aren't silly. People who corrupt them are." They sat in comfortable silence, watching Emma navigate Mario through obstacles. Over the past months, Danielle had become a friend first through the coding fair, then coffee after, then occasional dinners. Nothing romantic. Just 2 people who understood what betrayal felt like, finding platonic comfort in shared experience. "I have news," Danielle said. "I got a full-time position. Real benefits, salary, the works, no more freelancing." "That's amazing. Where?" Small startup in Mountain View. They actually checked their books, I made sure. She laughed, but there was an edge to it. They both had trust issues now, scars that showed in odd moments. Patrick's phone buzzed. A LinkedIn notification he almost dismissed, then did a double take. Chelsea Chen viewed your profile. What is it? Danielle noticed his expression. Nothing. Ghost from the past. He showed her the notification. From prison? They have LinkedIn in prison? Apparently. Library computers, probably. Patrick stared at the notification, then deleted it. Doesn't matter. But it did rattle him. He'd been good about not checking on Chelsea, not wondering how she was doing in federal prison. The divorce had been final for 6 months. Their apartment had been rented to new tenants. Even the Starbucks where they'd met had closed, replaced by a juice bar. All traces of their life together erased except for the occasional LinkedIn ghost. You okay? Danielle asked. Yeah, just weird. Thinking she's checking on me from prison. My ex does that too. Not from prison, but from Phoenix. Views my profile every few months like he's keeping tabs. She shrugged. I blocked him eventually. You should too. Patrick nodded but didn't reach for his phone. Some part of him wasn't ready to completely sever that last digital thread. Emma bounded over. Mom, I'm hungry. Can we get pizza? Actually, Patrick said, I was thinking of cooking. First meal in the new place. Want to stay? You cook? Danielle seemed surprised. I learned, had to. Turns out takeout for every meal gets expensive and depressing. They ended up making stir-fry together, Emma helping by badly chopping vegetables while regaling them with fourth-grade drama. It felt normal, domestic without being loaded, 3 people sharing a meal without subtext or schemes. This is nice, Danielle said as they ate. Normal nice. Been a while since I had that. Me too. After they left, Patrick cleaned up slowly, enjoying having his own dishes to wash, his own space to maintain. His therapist had been right. Living with his parents had been necessary but infantilizing. He needed to rebuild his adult life, even if that meant eating cereal for dinner sometimes and forgetting to buy toilet paper. Before bed, he sat at his computer and pulled up LinkedIn. Chelsea's profile was sparse. Her last update was from before the arrest. CEO at Chelsea's Organics, the company that no longer existed, that had destroyed multiple lives, frozen in digital amber. He hovered over the block button. It would be so easy. One click and she'd be gone from even this small corner of his world. Instead, he closed the laptop. He wasn't ready to forgive, might never be. But he also wasn't ready to completely forget. The anger had faded to a dull ache, like an old injury that only hurt when it rained. Maybe someday he'd be indifferent enough to block her, but not today. His phone rang, his mother, checking in as she did every night. Ma, I'm fine. Yes, I ate dinner. Real food, not instant noodles. Yes, I have furniture. No, I don't need you to bring me anything. Just checking. A mother worries. I know. I love you too. After hanging up, Patrick looked around his small apartment. 1 year ago, he'd been sleeping in his childhood bedroom, broken and bitter. Now he had his own place, a promotion, something like friendship, something like peace. The plant Danielle had brought sat on his kitchen counter, green and hopeful. Impossible to kill, she'd said. Patrick watered it carefully, determined to prove her right. He could keep something alive. He could grow something new. Outside, Fremont settled into evening, quieter than San Jose, but still humming with Bay Area energy. Somewhere in Texas, Chelsea sat in a federal prison cell. Somewhere else, Scott Morrison did the same. Victoria was probably out on parole, rebuilding her own life. Amanda Morrison was likely spending her divorce settlement. Everyone scattered by the explosion, finding their own ways forward. Patrick turned off the lights and headed to bed in his new room with its new bed and clean sheets. Tomorrow was Saturday. He had plans to hike with Kevin and Michael, then dinner at his parents' house. Simple plans. Honest plans. No one was lying to anyone or stealing from anyone or pretending to be something they weren't. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was real and it was his, and that was enough. The notification on his phone glowed in the dark. Chelsea Chen viewed your profile. Patrick turned the phone face down and closed his eyes. Let her look. Let her see what she'd lost. He had more important things to focus on than ghosts, like learning to live again, one impossible-to-kill plant at a time. 18 months after the explosion, Patrick found himself in an unexpected place, happy. Not the explosive joy of new love or sudden success, but a quiet contentment that had crept up gradually, like morning light filling a room. He sat in Golden Gate Park on a Sunday afternoon, watching Emma practice skateboarding while Danielle worked beside him on her laptop. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm over the month's weekend outings that were definitely not dates, dinners that were absolutely just friends sharing meals, a connection built on mutual understanding rather than romance. "She's getting good," Patrick observed as Emma successfully landed a small jump. "She gets that from her dad," Danielle said without bitterness. He was into extreme sports before extreme parenting scared him off. They'd learned to talk about their exes without flinching. Scar tissue forming over old wounds. Patrick's phone buzzed. An email from an address he didn't recognize. The subject line made his blood run cold. "From Chelsea, please read." "What's wrong?" Danielle noticed his face change. He showed her the phone. She whistled low. "You going to open it?" "I don't know. Should I?" "That's your call. But maybe not here? Not during a good day?" Patrick nodded, pocketing the phone. Whatever Chelsea had to say after 18 months of silence could wait. He'd learned that lesson not every fire required immediate response. They spent the rest of the afternoon in the park, Emma showing off increasingly ambitious tricks, while Patrick and Danielle alternated between cheering and wincing. Normal people doing normal things on a normal Sunday. That evening, alone in his apartment, Patrick finally opened the email. His therapist had taught him to prepare for Trigger's deep breathing, feet firmly on the floor, reminder that he was safe in his own space. "Patrick, I know I have no right to contact you. My lawyer says this is a bad idea. My therapist says I need to do it anyway. I'm writing to say I'm sorry. Not the manipulative sorry I used to weaponize, but actually sorry. Prison gives you time to think. Too much time. I've had to face who I became, what I did, why I did it. I could blame Scott. I could blame ambition. I could blame a lot of things. But the truth is, I made every choice. I chose to betray you. I chose to steal. I chose to lie every single day for months. Those were my choices, and I'm living with the consequences. You gave me everything, and I threw it away for an illusion. Scott doesn't write. He got transferred to Texas, closer to his family. Victoria got out 6 months ago. I'm alone here with my choices and the wreckage I created. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a response. I just needed you to know that I know what I did. All of it. And I'm sorry. I hope you found peace. I hope you found better than what I offered. You deserve that. Chelsea P.S. They have a garden here. I'm growing tomatoes. Turns out I can keep something alive after all. Just learned too late. Patrick read it 3 times, waiting for anger that didn't come. Instead, he felt empty, like reading a letter from a stranger about someone he used to know. He called his therapist's emergency line, not in crisis, but needing to process. "How do you feel about the letter?" Dr. Martinez asked. "That's the thing. I don't feel much of anything." "Is that normal?" "After trauma and betrayal? Very normal. Indifference can be its own form of healing. You don't owe her forgiveness or anger or anything else. You owe yourself peace." "Do I respond? Do you want to?" Patrick thought about it. "No, I don't think I do." "Then there's your answer." He deleted the email, then took out the trash as if physical distance from the deleted data could help. Back inside, he watered Danielle's plant, still alive after all these months, thriving even. His little apartment had accumulated more signs of life, actual furniture, art on the walls, a life rebuilt piece by piece. His phone rang. "Danielle. Just checking in. You okay? How did you know? You had that look. The ghosts are talking look. Was it bad?" "Just an apology. 18 months late and from federal prison, but an apology." "Do you believe it?" Patrick considered. "Yeah, actually, I think I do. Doesn't change anything, though." "Doesn't have to. Emma wants to know if you're still coming to her coding competition next week. Wouldn't miss it." "Good. She's been practicing her presentation on you. Fair warning, you're now Uncle Patrick in her project notes." Uncle Patrick. It had happened gradually, this integration into their small family unit. Not romantic, despite what his mother kept hinting. Just family adjacent. Safe harbor for two people who'd learned the hard way that romance could be a minefield. I'm honored to be the practice audience. You're more than that, Danielle said softly. You know that, right? You're important to both of us. You're important to me too, both of you. A pause. They'd been dancing around something for months, neither ready to risk their friendship for the possibility of more, both too scarred to trust easy promises. Danielle? Yeah? Maybe. Maybe we could talk about being important to each other. In person. Over coffee? Like a date coffee or a friend coffee? Like a, let's figure out what this is coffee. Another pause. Then, okay. Tuesday after work? Tuesday works. After they hung up, Patrick sat in his quiet apartment processing the day. Chelsea's letter already fading in importance next to the possibility of Tuesday coffee. The past reaching out just as the future beckoned. He made himself dinner actual cooking, not frozen meals. Set the table for one, but didn't feel lonely. Did dishes while listening to a podcast about software development. Normal evening routines that had become precious in their ordinariness. Before bed, he checked LinkedIn one more time. Chelsea's profile was gone. Deleted or suspended, he didn't know and found he didn't care. That chapter was closed, the bugs fixed, the code refactored. Tuesday coffee with Danielle, though. That was new code, untested, potentially buggy, definitely risky. But Patrick was learning that not all risks were disasters waiting to happen. Some were just life, moving forward, offering chances to those brave enough to debug their own hearts and try again. He fell asleep easily. No ghosts in the room, no water stains on the ceiling. Just a man in his own space, building his own life, one careful line of code at a time. 2 years and 3 months after the community center expose, Patrick stood in his parents' backyard, flipping burgers on the grill. The June sun was warm but not oppressive, filtered through the shade of the old oak tree he'd climbed as a kid. The yard was full of friends and family, a just because barbecue that had become a monthly tradition. "Patrick, stop burning my burger!" Emma called out from where she was teaching Patrick's young cousin to code on a laptop. "It's not burned, it's charred for flavor," he called back. "That's what Dad used to say," Emma laughed. "Before the divorce lawyers made him honest about his cooking." The casual mention of divorce no longer stung. It was just part of their stories now, like having brown eyes or being lactose intolerant. Facts without weight. Danielle appeared at his elbow with a fresh beer. "Need help?" "I've got it. You relax for once." She leaned against him slightly, a casual intimacy they'd earned over months of careful navigation. That Tuesday coffee had turned into Wednesday dinners, Thursday walks, Friday movie nights. Not rushing, not pushing, just becoming. "Hey, lovebirds," Kevin called out. "When's the wedding?" "When you finally beat me at Street Fighter," Patrick shot back. "So never," Michael added, earning a laugh from the group. Patrick's mother emerged from the kitchen with more food, because in her world, 20 people could apparently eat enough for 60. She patted Danielle's arm as she passed, a gesture of acceptance that had taken time to earn. His parents had been wary at first, another woman, another potential heartbreak. But Danielle's consistency, her honesty, her way of never asking Patrick to be anything but himself had won them over. "Uncle Patrick," Emma ran over. "Sarah says you can't really debug people like computers. Tell her about the presentation." "That was a metaphor, Em. People are way more complicated than code. But the principles apply, right? Like you taught me, identify the problem, trace the source, implement solutions." Patrick ruffled her hair. "You've been listening. Yeah, the principles apply. Just takes longer with people." As the afternoon wore on, Patrick found himself stepping back, observing. His father was teaching Emma's friend card tricks. His mother was gossiping with Kevin's new girlfriend. Michael was losing badly at cornhole to Danielle, who turned out to be surprisingly competitive at lawn games. 2 years ago, he'd thought his life was over. The public humiliation, the divorce, the financial ruin, it had felt like a program crash with no backup files. But here was the thing about crashes. They forced you to rebuild from scratch, to write better code. His phone buzzed. Work email that could wait. He ignored it. The Patrick of 3 years ago would have been checking constantly, anxious about every notification. Current Patrick had boundaries. Current Patrick knew that senior QA engineer was just his job title, not his identity. Penny for your thoughts? Danielle had wandered over, flushed from her cornhole victory. Just thinking about time, how different everything is. Good different or bad different? Good. Definitely good. She studied him with that way she had, reading his code like she'd learned his programming language. You're thinking about her. Not an accusation, just acknowledgement. They'd learned to speak the ghost's names when necessary. Not really her, just the timeline. 3 years ago I was married, broke, and didn't know it was all built on lies. Now. He gestured at the yard full of people. Now this. This is better, Danielle said simply. Yeah, it is. They stood together watching Emma orchestrate an elaborate game involving coding concepts and water balloons. Patrick's rebuilt life wasn't what he'd planned at 35. There was no house with a lemon tree, no startup success story, no carefully curated social media life. Instead, there was this: real friends who'd seen him at his worst and stuck around, parents who'd caught him when he fell, a job that paid well and didn't consume his soul, an apartment that felt like home, a woman who knew all his error messages and chose to help debug them rather than exploit them, a 10-year-old who called him Uncle Patrick and trusted him to teach her about logic and life. Patrick, his mother called, come settle an argument about the Warriors. Duty calls, he said to Danielle. Wait, she caught his hand. I know we said slow, and I know we're both still figuring things out, but I love this, all of it. You know? Patrick squeezed her hand. They hadn't said the L word yet, hadn't rushed any milestones, but it was there, growing steadily like the impossible to-kill plant that now had offspring throughout his apartment. I know. Me too. The argument about the Warriors devolved into good-natured shouting. Emma's water balloon game somehow incorporated his parents' garden hose. Kevin started telling the story of the community center expose to his new girlfriend, who gasped at all the right moments. Patrick flipped another burger, perfectly charred for flavor, and thought about debugging. How sometimes the biggest bugs weren't in the code, but in the architecture. How sometimes you had to tear down the whole system to build it right. How sometimes the crash was the best thing that could happen, even if it didn't feel like it at the time. His phone buzzed again, this time a notification he'd set up out of curiosity. Chelsea Chen released on parole. He looked at it for a moment, then deleted it. That system had been decommissioned long ago. No need to check its status updates. Patrick, the burgers! Emma called out, laughing as she dodged a water attack from his cousin. Coming, he called back, closing the grill and carrying the platter to the picnic table. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in California pastels. Somewhere out there, Chelsea was starting over at 35, finding out what life looked like after federal prison. He hoped she'd learned to build something real this time, hoped she'd found her own version of peace. But that wasn't his code to debug anymore. His job was here, in this backyard, with these people, building something true one day at a time. Who wants cheese on their burger? He called out, and was answered by a chorus of voices, Emma loudest of all. This was his life now, messy and real and his. The bug had been in thinking he needed more, when what he'd needed was better. Better code, better architecture, better error handling, better everything. The debugger had become the builder, and what he'd built, with help and time and patience, was worth every line of code it had taken to get here. To family! His father raised his beer, the traditional toast at these gatherings. Blood and chosen! To family! Everyone echoed, Patrick's voice strong among them. The glasses clinked, the sun set, and life debugged and rebuilt continued beautifully forward. Personally, this story is not only a shocking story about betrayal in marriage, but also a warning that blind trust can make us become victims of the people we love the most. When love is blinded by ambition and deception, the consequences are not only broken, but also the destruction of reputation, family, and future. But is exposing your partner in public an act of courage? Or is it cruel revenge? What do you think? Is it justice? Or is it just a moralistic gloating act?